Replacing the sugar in your coffee with honey feels like one of the easiest health upgrades you can make. You still get the sweetness. The jar looks more natural. And it usually costs more, which can make it feel more valuable. But here is the short answer: honey still raises blood glucose. In some short-term comparisons, certain types of honey may perform a little better than table sugar. That does not make honey a reliable blood sugar hack, and it does not prove a long-term benefit. So what are you really paying for? A better flavor, or a meaningful difference in your blood glucose? The answer depends on how the comparison is made, how much you actually use, and what else is in the meal. Honey can score a point in some experiments, but not simply because it is natural. Table sugar is mostly sucrose, which digestion breaks down into glucose and fructose. Honey also contains mostly glucose and fructose, along with water and small amounts of other compounds. In some short-term studies, certain honeys have produced a lower post-meal glucose response than the specific sugars used for comparison. But that does not mean every honey beats table sugar. The result depends on the type of honey, the comparison food, and the carbohydrate dose. The comparison can change depending on what the same amount means. Matching honey and sugar by carbohydrate shows how the body handles the same carb dose. Matching them by weight can favor honey because honey contains water. But matching them by teaspoon can flip the result. Honey is denser, so a teaspoon usually contains more carbohydrate and calories than a teaspoon of table sugar. Using typical USDA values, a teaspoon of honey has about 6 grams of carbohydrate and 21 calories. A teaspoon of sugar has about 4 grams of carbohydrate and 16 calories. The practical lesson is simple: compare the serving you will actually use, not just the ingredient name. That is why one glycemic index number cannot settle the question. Flour source, processing, and test design can all affect the result. A somewhat lower number does not mean low sugar, and a better-looking curve in one test does not turn honey into a sweetener that can be ignored. Mayo Clinic gives people with diabetes a direct answer: there is generally no advantage to replacing sugar with honey in a diabetes eating plan. Both affect blood glucose. Honey tastes sweeter, so some people may be satisfied with less. But if the amount does not actually decrease, that possible advantage is hard to realize. So the honest score after round 1 is not honey is healthy and sugar is harmful. It is this: honey may have a small advantage under certain conditions, but the rules of the comparison can change the result. Laboratory studies weigh ingredients, control the carbohydrate dose, and measure blood glucose at set times. At home, many people squeeze honey straight from the bottle and estimate the amount by eye. If that leads you to use more, the extra carbohydrate may cancel out the small difference seen in a controlled experiment. That does not mean honey always makes people use more. Because it tastes sweeter and has a stronger flavor, some people may be happy with less. The important point is that any real-world advantage depends on what happens to the actual serving, total carbohydrate, and total added sugar after the switch. Switching jars does not help if the amount of added sugar stays the same. There is another common trap. Sometimes honey does not replace sugar at all. It gets added to plain yogurt, oatmeal, toast, or a smoothie because it is treated like a healthy topping. In that case, you have not exchanged one added sugar for another. You have added a new source of sugar to the meal. The American Diabetes Association includes honey with other added sugars. When you are estimating the likely effect on blood glucose, 3 questions are more useful than the word natural. How many total carbohydrates are in the serving? How much will you actually eat? And does the meal also provide fiber and protein? That helps explain why the same spoonful of honey can behave differently in different breakfasts. Honey in a sweet drink is not the same meal as honey served with plain Greek yogurt, nuts, or high-fiber oatmeal. Protein, fiber, the amount of carbohydrate, and the rest of the meal can change how quickly glucose enters the bloodstream. The honey has not changed its identity. The context around it has changed. At this point, it would be tempting to say that honey is simply the slightly better substitute, as long as you control the amount. Long-term research does not give us such a clean answer. A post-meal glucose test usually follows what happens during the hours after eating. It asks how quickly and how high blood glucose rises after that particular food or meal. Hemoglobin A1C, often shortened to A1C, estimates average blood glucose over roughly the previous 2 to 3 months. These tests do not answer the same question. Here is why the human evidence is hard to interpret. A 2020 systematic review included 8 studies. 7 reported a significant reduction in at least one blood glucose or A1C result after honey consumption, 2 reported no significant difference in at least one such result, and 2 reported a significant increase in at least one such result. These were overlapping result categories, not counts of mutually exclusive studies. The studies also used different honeys, doses, participants, comparison groups, and follow-up periods. The reviewers concluded that the limited evidence did not permit a definite conclusion about honey's effects on glycemia in people with diabetes. They called for larger, well-designed randomized trials. That is the critical boundary. A lower glucose curve after one meal cannot automatically be translated into a long-term health promise. But inconsistent evidence does not prove that honey and sugar behave identically in every situation either. The evidence supports a careful statement: honey may behave a little differently in some short-term tests. It does not support recommending honey as a reliable long-term blood glucose strategy. Could a more expensive or less processed honey change the conclusion? The cited human evidence does not establish that raw honey, dark honey, or edible Manuka honey improves long-term glucose control compared with other edible honeys. These products may contain different levels of plant compounds and may show antioxidant or antibacterial activity. But antibacterial activity, antioxidant activity, and glucose control are 3 separate questions. None of those features makes the sugar and carbohydrate in honey disappear. It is also important not to confuse edible Manuka honey with medical-grade honey. Medical-grade products undergo specific quality controls and may be used topically for selected wounds under professional supervision. Evidence about wound care cannot be used to claim that eating honey improves blood glucose. People with diabetes should not apply raw honey or ordinary food-grade honey to a wound. Diabetes can make wounds more difficult to heal, and a wound should be evaluated by a qualified healthcare professional. Choosing raw or Manuka honey can be a decision about flavor, origin, or personal preference. But claims that it will not raise blood glucose, or that it can treat diabetes, go beyond the evidence. No honey can replace diabetes nutrition management, medication, or insulin. The expensive jar may have properties worth studying. In your coffee, it still contributes carbohydrate. Here is the simplest rule: choose honey for flavor, not as a blood sugar treatment. When you use it, measure it. Then ask, did this replace another added sugar? And did I use less? If not, switching to honey probably did not improve the meal. Next, look at the whole plate or bowl. Total carbohydrate and serving size matter most, while protein and fiber can affect how quickly glucose rises. Words like natural, raw, and organic do not answer those questions. If you have diabetes, count honey as an added sugar and keep it within your eating plan. Do not change medication or insulin based on a study or an online claim. If you want to see how a meal affects you, review your glucose targets and testing plan with your doctor or registered dietitian. Bottom line, measure it, use it as a replacement rather than an extra, and judge the whole meal. Honey can be a flavor choice. It is not a blood sugar solution.